country of
Women,
ours.
they're not women. They're about 12 years old, but yeah, really
You didn't have to elaborate.
He had the looks, he had the talent, he had the spotlight. Jonathan Brandis wasn't just another child star, he was the one Hollywood bet on. Studios believed he could be the next DiCaprio, and for a while, it seemed inevitable. Teen magazines plastered his face on every cover. Girls screamed his name, directors lined up. But then, he vanished. Not from the tabloids, not from the screen, from life itself. In Arts and Sen, Jonathan Brandis was found hanging in his Los Angeles apartment. No suicide note, no explanation, just silence. The kind of silence that wraps around a mystery so tight, it suffocates the truth. What happened to the boy who once stood on red carpets with the future in his eyes? Why did Hollywood turn away from him at the peak of his youth? And what dark spiral pulled him so far under, he couldn't find a way back? The world remembers him as the kid from SeaQuest, the golden boy from Ladybugs, the teen idol with a 1,000-watt smile. But that's not the story we're here to tell. Because behind the fame, behind the applause, was a lonely young man quietly falling apart. And the truth behind it is much darker. Jonathan Gregory Brandis was born on April Shasen, Chen Jobai Tsishilo, in Danbury, Connecticut. From the outside, his life looked normal. His father was a food distributor, and his mother had once dreamed of being an elementary school teacher. But underneath that, suburban calm was a quiet storm. By the time Jonathan was 2, he was already mimicking voices, making up characters in front of the mirror. His parents noticed. Especially his mother, Mary, who saw in her only child something rare, something she never dared to chase in herself. And so, she gave it everything. At 6, Jonathan booked his first job, a modeling gig for a department store catalog. By 9, he was appearing in commercials, sometimes flying between Connecticut and New York multiple times a week. Childhood, as most kids knew it, was over. His classmates didn't understand. Jonathan wasn't just the cute kid, he was different. He missed school for auditions, came back with stories of producers and agents. Some kids mocked him, others avoided him. He learned early how to pretend he didn't care. But it wasn't easy. In interviews, he'd later talk about feeling like an outsider. The pressure to be perfect didn't come from Hollywood, it came from within. When he was 10, the family made a bold move. They packed up and relocated to Los Angeles. All or nothing. The Brandis dream was now a family business. His mother became his manager. His father worked multiple jobs. And Jonathan, he worked harder than most grown men. Every morning meant auditions. Every evening meant scripts. He wasn't just chasing fame. He was chasing approval, purpose, maybe even love. And when he got it, a callback, a guest role, a commercial, he smiled like it was enough. But enough never lasted long. He landed his first major film role at just 13, in The Never-Ending Story 2, The Next Chapter. That should have been a moment of celebration. But the media noticed something else. The boy was too polished, too practiced, too perfect. Behind the scenes, he was struggling. Fame had a cost. Isolation. Kids at his age were discovering who they were. Jonathan was becoming who the industry wanted him to be. He never rebelled, never lashed out, but inside, he began building walls quietly, carefully, brick by brick. Even as he rose to stardom, one haunting question followed him. If he stopped performing, would anyone still love him? By the early Chenjo by Joshu's, Jonathan Brandis had become more than a working child actor, he was everywhere. At just Shirsu, he landed the role that would define his career, Lucas Wolensak, the boy genius on NBC's SeaQuest DSV. It wasn't just another part, it was the part. Spielberg was producing, NBC poured millions into the series, and Jonathan, he became an overnight sensation. Teen magazines couldn't get enough of him. Tiger Beat, BOP, Teen Beat, his face was on every cover. Fan mail flooded in, thousands of letters a week. Girls waited outside studios for a glimpse. His voice, his hair, even the way he walked, became talking points for a generation of teenagers. He didn't just act, he carried the entire show. At one point, SeaQuest's ratings were largely attributed to one thing: Jonathan Brandis. Behind the scenes, he remained professional, polite, hardworking, not the type to party, not the type to crack under pressure. But pressure has a way of hiding, where no one can see. As his fame grew, so did the expectations. Casting directors wanted him to stay young, forever fresh-faced. Writers adjusted scripts to fit his image. Managers pushed him to stay visible, relevant. But inside, something began to shift. He was no longer playing characters. He was becoming one, a commodity, a product. He started losing roles not because he lacked talent, but because he was too associated with a particular kind of innocence. He was the good kid, the nice boy, the harmless crush. And in a town obsessed with reinvention, that brand became a trap. While Leonardo DiCaprio took darker roles in The Basketball Diaries and Total Eclipse, stretching into edgy, dangerous territory, Jonathan couldn't escape the teen heartthrob label. He auditioned for Titanic. He didn't get it. That loss haunted him. Years later, a friend would say, he didn't just want the role, he needed it. He thought that was his ticket back. But the train had left, and Jonathan Brandis was still at the station, waving with a smile, pretending everything was fine. The fame that once lit up his world had started to flicker, and the shadows were getting longer. When SeaQuest was cancelled in Chenja by Joshalo, Jonathan Brandis was only Archer, but in Hollywood years, he was aging out. The teen magazines stopped calling, the fan letters slowed. The cameras turned elsewhere, and for the first time in over a decade, the phone went silent. Jonathan tried to adapt. He auditioned for adult roles more serious, more grounded, but casting directors didn't see him that way. In their eyes, he was still the baby-faced genius from Saturday night TV. He began writing screenplays, directing short films, even considering a move behind the camera, but nothing stuck, nothing landed. Friends would later say he was desperately trying to stay relevant. He cut his hair, changed his look, took roles in indie films, but the industry had moved on, and Jonathan hadn't. It wasn't just the rejection, it was what it did to him. It possidus. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, depression set in. He stopped smiling in photos. His interviews turned awkward, guarded. Close friends noticed he was drinking more, retreating more. In public, he was still polite, still charming, but in private, he spoke of feeling invisible, forgotten, like he'd peaked too soon. He once confided to a friend, "I've been famous longer than I've been normal." That wasn't a brag, it was a cry for help. The final blow came in R, when he landed a minor part in the film Heart's War, starring Bruce Willis. It was supposed to be his comeback, a return to big screens. But when the movie hit theaters, his scenes had been drastically cut. Barely a few minutes remained. No explanation, no warning. Jonathan was devastated. Friends recall him spiraling after that. He stopped showing up for events. He isolated himself in his apartment. He told people he had nothing left. By mid-R10, he was drinking heavily. His close circle, now very small, tried to reach out. But Jonathan had mastered the art of pretending. He knew how to say, "I'm fine," even when he wasn't. There were no DUIs, no arrests, no rehab headlines, just a quiet unraveling. The kind of pain that doesn't make the news but never stops bleeding. It happened on the night of November Shuri, R10 Jonathan Brandis returned to his apartment in Los Angeles. He'd been drinking. Friends said he'd been deeply sad that day, more than usual. At some point during the night, he wrote nothing. No note, no final words. Then he hung himself in the hallway. He was found hours later by a friend, alive but barely. Paramedics rushed him to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Machines kept him breathing, but the damage had already been done. On November Shirar, Archen-sen, Jonathan Brandis was pronounced dead. He was Archer-chi years old. There was no media frenzy, no candlelight vigils, no national headlines, just a quiet announcement and a silence that no one seemed ready to break. His parents were devastated, his friends stunned. Many didn't even know he was struggling. The boy with the golden smile, the child who once carried primetime television on his back, was gone. And perhaps what haunted people most was that no one saw it coming. In the days that followed, whispers surfaced. Friends admitted he'd talked about ending his life. He felt washed up, unwanted, lost. He couldn't see a way forward. But the world had moved on too fast to notice. He died alone. In the same industry that once begged for his face, no one came running in the end. There are no famous last words, no big red flags, just a boy who had been trying to disappear for years. And one night he finally did. Jonathan Brandis was more than a teen idol, more than a pretty face on magazine covers. He was a boy who carried the weight of fame before he ever understood its cost. His co-stars remember him as thoughtful, humble, always prepared. His fans remember him as their first crush, the soft-spoken genius who made them feel seen. But behind the charm was a young man who desperately wanted to be taken seriously, who longed to grow, to evolve, to be more than a fleeting memory. In the years since his passing, his story has become a quiet, cautionary tale about how Hollywood lifts children up, only to forget them when they're no longer young. About how depression wears many masks and often hides behind a smile. There are no awards in his name, no documentaries, no biopics, just scattered tributes, fan-made videos, and a lingering sense of what could have been. Maybe we loved the character, but we never really knew the person inside.